This is Melinda Kucsera. I don't normally do lives, but I was so excited about Dragon Spells. This was a really difficult book to write. It was also a fun book, but it was very difficult. Dragon Spells is based on a series of stories that ran in my newsletter in 2019, and trying to piece them together into a novel was not easy. Mainly because some of the things that were happening in the story, they were driven by readers' responses, and so I wasn't the one driving the plot, so that made it sort of hard to know why certain things were happening. So I had to go back and figure out a coherent reason for why some of the things were happening, and it was difficult, but it was also fun. So Dragon Spells was a tough book to write, but it was also a fun book to write, and I'm really excited about it. I just got the paperback copy of it, as you can see, and it's so nice. I mean, it's just I like books that you can actually read, like where the text is actually there's space between the words. There's there's a nice margin where you can try to show you. I don't have a phone stand, so you can see you can actually hold the book and you're not covering text, which I hate. I used to work in New York City, and I used to read on the train, and I'd be sitting there having to shift my fingers into really uncomfortable positions just to see all the text on the page. That was just really frustrating. So I decided not to do that for my own books. And I would make them, there'd be a lot of space, there'd be nice margins, you can actually hold the book. The print would be a readable size, there'd be space between the lines. So that I'm really, really excited about. I think it looks really nice, and I think it's a really great experience to read it in print if that's your thing. It's also available in ebook. So I'm really excited about this. And So I figure I'd read some of it to you guys. So let me just go back to the beginning. Sorry, I don't have a stand. The characters really wanted me to do this, so they didn't care that I don't have a stand. They don't care that they're fictional, so they can't hold the phone for me. So they're like, "Oh, you'll just figure it out." Yeah, this is me figuring it out. So sorry if it's not the best live in the world. I'm trying. So, okay. So I'm going to read some Dragon Spells to you. If you have any questions, just, pop them into the comments, and Rand will probably answer you. He answers everything. He's the fictional boy in the story. He's the boy in a lot of my stories, and he really likes social media. So he will be the one answering you. He doesn't let me answer anything. It doesn't matter that he's fictional. That doesn't stop him. All right, so let's go, because he's bugging me to read it. So, what's in a name? Many things. Since names are protected by privacy laws, we chose to change the names of all non-fictional people mentioned in this tale except our scribe, me, Melinda Kucsera, because her name is our brand. So we can use her name as often as we like. Since the original version of the story included names and quotes from emails sent by our subscribers, we've abbreviated their names to their first initial to protect their identity. We take their privacy very seriously, and really we do. We're very careful about everything that we do. We take privacy into account for everything. My background is actually in electronic publishing. I work for a publishing company, and I actually had to read all the privacy laws and come up with a strategy for our own company, the one that I work for, to how they were going to implement it to protect people's privacy and to give them the ability to choose, how to be able to exercise their rights. So, and I made sure that for my newsletter, for my little tiny author business, that we brought all of that in there. So we're very careful with everything. And I got way off topic. I'm sorry. So all responses were paraphrased, and in some cases wholly rewritten to fit the expanded story. But each one preserves the essence of the original response because our subscribers are awesome, and they really are. We love them dearly. And they sent in some great ideas for how to separate a certain dragon from her latest fixation. Okay, so I gotta do this so I can see the page. Hi readers, this is Ran, and you're probably wondering why I'm running. Well, that's because a dragon's chasing me. Before I get into why, I want to take a moment to remember all those who have given their lives for their country, and to thank those who are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today we remember them, but we should thank them every day, not just today. So from all of us, thank you. And now back to me, Rand's beloved son and sidekick, running for his life down a shadowy tunnel for your amusement. Why is a dragon chasing me? Well, you'll have to read on. This is a spoiler-free introduction. Rand actually wanted to tell you the reason why in the introduction, and I had to delete it. And he kept putting it back, and I kept deleting it. So that also made the book take a little longer to write. Fictional characters, I don't think are supposed to be able to do that, but for some reason my characters are really over-enthusiastic when it comes to the books, and I often open up a file and find things that I didn't put in there, and I'm always having to reread everything to see what did Rand add now, does this fit, should this be here? So it's something of a challenge. So So it's a spoiler-free introduction. Before you turn the page to find out how this all turns out for your hero, me, that's Rand, I wanted to tell you Dragon Spells is based on the series of stories called Dragon Troubles. Episodes of it published in our weekly newsletter in 2019, but it's been rewritten a lot. It has, and a lot has been added. The original story that ran the newsletter was about 17,000 words, and the final book that I'm holding in my hand is 70,000 words. There was a lot of stuff added, a lot of really good, interesting, fun things. So yeah, so it's about 4 times as long. Actually, it's more than 4 times. 18 times 4 is, I don't know, maybe, yeah, it's about. But who doesn't love more page time with yours truly, Rand? He must get his extra scenes any way he can. The book you're about to read, I already told you about that. So yeah, so there's plenty of great stuff in here that if you've been a newsletter subscriber and you've been with us for a while, you probably read in the newsletter, as we published each episode. So there's still like a lot of great stuff in here that you haven't seen, like a lot of good stuff. So if you hadn't guessed, the story is from Rand's perspective. There's occasional forays into other people's minds, but he obviously doesn't know anything about that. Who am I? I'm Rand, the son and sidekick of Sauron the Cursebreaker from the Cursebreaker books by Melinda Kucsera. If you like the story, we recommend you check out the Cursebreaker books by Melinda Kucsera. That's me. We've got 9 books besides this one, and 1 box set, plus more on the way. No prior knowledge is necessary to read the story. We try to tell this tale so anyone can enjoy it, regardless of whether they have read any of our other novels or earlier newsletter adventures. Hopefully we achieve that. Those earlier adventures are coming to ebook too. They're also really hard to write because they were written at various times with various things going on, and sometimes the characters were just doing things because they decided to do those things. It's on me, the author, to try and figure out, okay, why were you doing this, and how can we tell this in a way that someone who wasn't part of the newsletter when this mayhem was happening each week can enjoy it. So that's on me. But yeah, those earlier adventures are coming to ebook too. And now I present to you Dragon Spells. If you enjoy it, please leave us a review. Wait, what did they put? Reviews are like report cards. They let us characters know how we did and how many plot holes we snuck past our scribe. Oh, really? They tried to sneak some plot holes past me. That's interesting. That I didn't know. It's sort of a game for us, but don't tell it. Well, now I know, so now I'm going to be on the lookout for it. Love and hugs, Rand, your host and hero for this adventure. And he's going to be in so much trouble because now I know what his game is. So let's get into the first chapter. What a strange light. Mount Eredra and Sheari. As I snuck down the shadowy tunnel, I listened for any signs my absence had been noticed. So far, so good. The door to the Foundlings' cave stayed closed, but a click disturbed the quiet, and I turned. Where had that noise come from? Was there trouble afoot, or worse, on my trail? Nothing moved in the shadows, but I'd forgotten to take a Lumiere crystal with me. Darn. I'd have to risk sneaking home to grab one. Papa always kept spares lying around because he liked light, and right now I could use some illumination. But that was the first place anyone would look for me, so I couldn't go there. But I needed light. My eyes didn't glow like Papa's did. Neither did my hands. Where else could I get something to light my way? This tunnel only sported a few of the glowing crystals called Lumiere, but they were few and far between and left large areas in shadow, like the one I stood in. This was a big problem. If I couldn't see where I put my feet, how could I find the right staircase? Only one had a secret door to the outside where Papa might be at this hour. Well, I wouldn't find it by standing around dithering where my babysitters could find me, so I crept over to the intersection of two tunnels. Which way led eventually to Papa? One tunnel was shadowed, and the other was lit by a distant glow. I headed toward that light, but stopped when the light came toward me. It was probably just a person holding a Lumiere crystal, but why a blue one? They were the only crystals that cooled the air around them. Papa never let me touch the blue ones for that reason. He didn't want those cold crystals to freeze my little fingers. So why was someone using a blue Lumiere crystal to light their way, when there are plenty of other crystals that would just glow prettily without sucking the heat out of anything they touched? Something wasn't right here. That blue glow kept growing, but I couldn't see who was holding it. Someone had to be, because crystals didn't walk around on their own, not unless Papa's magic moved them. But I'd know if Papa was near. I'd feel all warm and safe, and I didn't, not one bit. I fell back a step as that light doubled and tripled in size. It was 3 times larger than me and coming this way much faster than a person who wasn't magically enhanced could move. Maybe I should run too. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel, but they were much louder than they should be. What on earth was going on here? The urge to run warred with the need to know until my natural curiosity won out. But I had second thoughts when the light doubled again. How big was this thing? Certainly taller than Papa, and he was the tallest person I knew. Maybe I should hide. I glanced around for somewhere to do that, but this tunnel didn't have any stalagmites cluttering it up. I shielded my eyes from the blue glow and backed into an intersection. What was making that light? I squinted at it and just made out a creature that wasn't human. For one thing, its head was disproportionately larger than a human head should be, which meant it was a monster coming to eat me. I spun on my heel and made like my nickname. I ran. "You can't escape me that easily," the creature said. Her growly voice was familiar, but it couldn't be who I thought it was. There was no internet here. How the heck did she even find me? I lived in a fantasy world, and she belonged in something called cyberspace, which was only accessible through the computer in my scribe's apartment. But Melinda lived in some place called the real world, a place I wasn't supposed to know existed. But I did know, and I visited it many times. That still didn't explain how that dragon had gotten here. This is all very confusing. "You can't be here. This is my world. You don't belong here," I said over my shoulder. I wished I had a weapon, but Uncle Myron had made me leave my slingshot and metal balls at home, the big meanie. "But here I am." The newsletter dragon stomped after me. "How could she do that? How did you get here?" That part didn't make any sense at all. She was made of code, not muscle and bone like I was. Nor was I curious enough to stop and find out what she'd done to protect herself, because tech and magic didn't mix at all. The one tended to short-circuit the other, and my subterranean world was saturated with magic. The original builders of this place had bespelled every surface down here for reasons only they knew. But they were long dead, so I couldn't ask them what was up with that. The dragon exhaled, and a fireball struck the rock next to me. I shut my mouth on the questions bubbling up inside me and ran as far and as fast as my little legs could carry me through the dank tunnels under the mountain. There would be times to ask questions later when I wasn't running for my life with no safety in sight, just a lot of dark shadows. But I didn't do quiet well, so my silence only lasted until I rushed around a bend into another intersection. "Papa, where are you?" I tripped and landed on my knees, but my rugged pants protected me as I popped up and took off again. I should have grabbed the Lumiere crystal before I snuck out of the foundling's cave. Why weren't they searching for me? One of the foundlings should have noticed I was gone by now. I'm small, but I'm not small enough that they could overlook my absence for long. "I'm going to enjoy barbecuing you," the dragon bellowed as she thundered down the right-hand tunnel behind me. Eek! She was gaining on me! I pumped my arms and tried to eke out a little more speed from my tiring legs. "Papa!" He always knew where I was. I hoped that knowledge extended to my current circumstances, and that knowledge sent him running to help me. I could use his magic right now, or some of my own, but that little flame inside me didn't react when I reached for it. I had magical potential, but it just wasn't active or useful yet. I charged around another bend, searching for hidey holes. There had to be at least one around here, but none met my frantically scanning eyes as something caught the back of my tunic. That damn dragon effortlessly lifted me, kicking and screaming into the air. How was she solid enough to pick me up? She was supposed to be made of code chunks, but I didn't see any of the ones and zeros that usually comprised her. They were hidden under a layer of dark scales. She looked like a real dragon, except for her creepy eyes. Rings of flickering blue ones and zeros revolved around those dark spheres, and they glared at me. But her eyes weren't the only part of her that glowed. A weird blue light shone from the horn in the center of her forehead. "Hey, put me down!" I swung my little fist at her, but my arms were too short to lance any real blows. Footsteps heartened me. Papa must be coming. But he'd better hurry up. "Papa, how about a magical shield for your only son? Or a rescue? A rescue would be awesome right now!" I kicked at the dragon, but my feet didn't connect because my legs were too short. "Papa, where are you?" The Things Kids Do, Mount Eredrin, Sheari. Sarn took the 200-plus dark twisting steps 3 at a time thanks to his magic. Green light shined out of his eyes and provided all the light he needed to see the steps winding around the pillar in the center of the spiral staircase. In the back of his mind, his map kept track of his location, and numbers appeared on the bottom left corner of his peripheral vision. They counted down the steps to the subterranean lower quarters, the only place indentured men like him were allowed to live. It was no place to raise a child, but it was his only option, so Sarn made the best of it. No doubt the bag of food thumping against his back would make his cave a little homier. At least he hoped so. Ran had never complained, but his son had never lived anywhere other than a damp cave under a mountain, and that's my fault. Sarn adjusted the sack weighing him down. Inside, various items clinked, crinkled, and probably squished. Just let them still be edible. Sarn was too tired to run back for more, and he was late, too. His brother had already headed off to school, but he'd caught Myron in between classes long enough to hand his younger brother an egg sandwich and some fruit. Now Sarn just needed to feed his son. Then maybe he could get some sleep. But Rand wouldn't be happy about that. Neither did the boy have a choice. I have to work nights, which meant he had to sleep during the day when his son wanted to go out and play. Sarn slammed his fist into the wall, enclosing the spiral staircase in frustration. Magic sheathed his fist in green energy, protecting it. I have a debt to pay. That debt allowed his younger brother to attend school and hopefully escape the cycle of poverty before it claimed his life too. The counter ran down to 0, and Sarn exited the staircase through a rough hole to a tunnel that dog-legged into the lower quarters. Before turning into it, he pulled his head map into view and searched it for anyone on an intercept course. People symbols occupied the nearby tunnels, but no one appeared to be on a parallel path. Ditto for perpendicular tunnels, but that situation would change. Down here dwelt an awful lot of people. Thoughts of this place's population switched on the part of his magic obsessed with numbers, and an ache blossomed right behind his left eye as a new counter appeared in the bottom right corner of his head map. Its tally jumped to 1,000 and kept rising. Before his magic could reach out and count every person who lived under the mountain, Sarn gave it a new directive. Find my son. A white star immediately appeared in place of the counter, but there was something not quite right about it. Why was his son running around down here on his own? One of the foundlings was supposed to be watching him. Another marker appeared on his map, but he didn't recognize it. What the hell was going on? It was time he found out. As the unknown symbol gained on his fleeing son, Sarn dropped the sack of food. He could return later, after he'd plucked Ran out of whatever trouble the boy was in now. Sarn broke into a run, and his magic pushed him to hurry up and save his son. The tunnels blurred as he ran like his son's life depended on it, because it just might. His map didn't have enough details to tell for certain. Sarn shot around a bend. Ahead, a gauntlet of broken stones waited. His cave lay at the other end of that obstacle, but he navigated the collapsed columns and piles of debris with ease, thanks to his magic. It nudged his feet, keeping them on a firm footing. No matter how broken up the ground became, his magic rushed in and stabilized it before any loose stones could trip him up. Relief energized Sarn as he cleared the last obstacle between him and his son. "Papa!" Rand shouted from around the corner. Sarn skidded to a stop, just a few feet away from a scene ripped from his worst nightmare. His adorable little boy hung from a large, sharp claw and swung his little fist little fists ineffectually at an honest-to-God dragon, complete with wings and a spiky tail, coiled snake-like on the floor behind it. Rand didn't hit the dragon, but not for lack of trying. The boy must have sensed he was near, because Rand called out to him, "Papa, how about a magical shield for your only son? Or a rescue? A rescue would be awesome right now. Papa!" Right, he should stop gawking and save his son. Sarn set a burst of magic to collect the boy, and his magic wrapped around his son, cocooning him in an impenetrable shield. Rand floated on a cloud of green energy safe into his arms, and he hugged that boy tightly. "Thank you, Papa!" Rand hugged him hard. The talkative tyke seemed none the worse for wear, thank fate. That was a small miracle, judging by the anger flashing in the dragon's peculiar eyes. In fact, the dragon was a lot smaller than Sarn had thought one would be in the flesh. She was maybe twice the 6.5 feet in height. Shouldn't she be a lot taller? Her horned head didn't even touch the ceiling. Granted, the stalactite-covered ceiling was about 40 feet high. Weren't dragons supposed to be massive? Well, this one wasn't. The dragon approached, but she wasn't heavy enough to shake the floor, not with the protective spells in the stonework redirecting her weight. Sarn backed away from her, and the blue light shining out of her eyes and horns. "What's going on here?" Sarn relaxed his tight embrace so he could look his son in the eyes. Rand was a small, bubbly copy of him, but thankfully the tyke didn't have any magic yet. "You should run now," Rand said into his shoulder. "Why?" Sarn looked from the dragon exhaling smoke rings to his son. What was that smoke for? "Because the dragon might still be mad at me." Rand ducked his head to hide his guilty little face. "Why is the dragon mad at you?" Sarn regarded his son in perplexity. What could such a sweet child possibly have done to upset a dragon? "I might have said a few things, but they were all true." Rand started to cross his heart, but Sarn stopped him. "Don't swear. Promises are binding. You have to be careful what you say to people, especially to me." Sarn squeezed his son's hand, then let go. A string of well-intentioned promises had bound him, body and soul, to more masters than he wanted to think about, and Sarn had no way out of that. Nor did he want that kind of life for the boy he held close to his heart. His son should be free to pursue whatever he wanted, not tied to a bunch of promises made in ignorance. Sarn knew he should cut himself some slack. He'd been a stupid teenager at the time he'd made those promises. Unfortunately, that didn't make them any less binding. A fireball struck the shield around them, cutting off the recriminations, looping through his mind, and it exploded in a shower of sparks. Of course, Rand reached for them. "Ooh, pretty!" No, they weren't, so Sarn kept a firm hold on his son. "Face me!" The enraged dragon beat her fisted claws against her chest, and that sounded like a fine idea. Sarn had some frustration to work off, and a dragon was the perfect opponent. But first, he had his son to put somewhere safe, preferably somewhere the boy couldn't interfere, like their cave. It was even more fortified than this tunnel. Rand would be safe there, and it wasn't far away. In fact, his cave was in the next tunnel. Sarn backed into a wall, and his magic seeped into it. "Let me pass." The stones behind him liquefied and flowed away on either side of him, forming a temporary doorway he slipped through before it closed, revealing a solid wall again. "Thank you." Sarn rested a hand against the wall, then turned away. "Did we just walk through a stone wall?" Rand stared at him in awe. "Yeah, it was in the way." Sarn didn't see what was so special about that. "My magic likes rocks. I just let it rearrange them." Sarn shrugged. "That was so cool. Can we do that again?" His son's eagerness took Sarn by surprise. "I guess we could." What he'd done wasn't hard. Sarn just hadn't thought of it before. The walls shook as the dragon rammed it, and cracks appeared in the stonework. This section wasn't reinforced by ancient spells, and that was the only reason Sarn had even considered going through it, but it wouldn't stand up to a concentrated attack for long. Sarn sprinted to his cave and flung the door open. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Before Rand could protest, and his son had about to, judging by the stubborn set to his jaw, Sarn set the boy down inside their cave and shut the door. A loud bang echoed through the tunnel, followed by loud footsteps. Sarn sent some of his magic into the stone lintel, and it hugged the door. "Keep the door closed. Protect my son." There, that should do it. Rand would be safe now, but he wasn't. Sarn turned to face the dragon running toward him. I have to take a very quick break to get a little bit of water before my voice gives out. Okay, on to the next chapter. Cryptic Bears. Mat Aredra and Shayari. Papa had done his worried thing again, and put a solid door between us. It was just him and the dragon now, and I didn't even have a keyhole to peer through. So not fair. What if something bad happened to Papa? How would I know? I pounded on the door as hard as I could with my little fists. Let me out! The door to our cave was usually secured by a metal bolt, but I threw it back, and the door still wouldn't open. I kicked it for good measure. Green light seeped between the door and jamb, ensuring it stayed firmly closed. Even Papa's magic was in on the stop-ran from participating game. That was even more unfair, because there was no arguing with Papa's magic when it got all protective like this. Hang it up, kid. He won't let you out until it's safe, and that might take a while, Bear said. But I pointed futilely at the door that refused to budge. Bear shook his head and turned the page. My stuffed friend appeared to be reading, but Bear didn't have eyes. He had 2 buttons that shined when his spirit was in residence, as it was now. What are you reading? It looked like a book, but some books had stories in them and some didn't. I didn't want to assume this was a storybook kind. I crossed to the mattress where he sat to get a better look at it. Some legal stuff. Bear didn't even look up from the book. Whatever for? I glanced at them, but the pages were covered in tiny words. There wasn't a single picture among them. I gave the book a moue of distaste. No reason, just curiosity. Bear shrugged. You're curious about what? I fingered the crocheted throw at the end of the ratty mattress. It was new to this cave, and I wondered if it had come from Melinda's apartment. Sometimes we borrowed things from her. How damages will get repaired? With a dragon around, things will break. I'm curious about who pays for them. Bear gave me an unreadable look. I just shrugged. That sounds like a good puzzle for Papa. He likes solving mysteries, and I like helping him. Do you think he's okay out there? The door still glowed faintly green, and probably wouldn't open if I tried the handle again. I folded my arms over my chest while I waited for a response, but Bear just turned the page. Was he ignoring me? A loud bang startled me, and the door rattled and shook. When it stilled, the cave was silent again, until Bear turned another page. Is Papa okay out there? He's all alone with an angry dragon, and I couldn't hear anything more because our cave had thick walls. That was also Papa's doing. He had an affinity for rocks, and so did his magic. He can shield. The dragon can't, Bear said finally as he continued to read. He wasn't concerned at all, but worry had twisted my little tummy into knots. Bear rolled his button eyes. Oh, don't look at me like that. He'll be fine. And all that shielding is good practice. Your father needs a teacher. True, but I should be with him. We always adventure together. I willed the door to open and for Papa to walk in whole and undamaged. In case you haven't noticed, we're not on an adventure at the moment. Bear frowned at what he was reading and flipped several pages before reading some more. But we could go on an adventure at any moment. I bounced on the balls of my feet. Excitement filled up all the worried places inside me, leaving no room for anything else. I loved adventures, even the dangerous kind. Maybe. One never knows when an adventure will knock on your door. Bear furrowed his furry brow as he riffled through the book, searching for something. Or where that adventure will take you. I reached for the door handle. Maybe this time it would open. It didn't. Drat! It's a mystery, my young friend, but so are many things. Bear winked a button eye at me and turned another page. This time a sword poked out of the blocks of words. Bear shoved it back in with a swipe of his well-padded and quite furry paw. I eyed the book curiously. I like stories with swords in them. Papa didn't have a sword, but he wanted one. Some dumb law said indentured servants like Papa couldn't bear arms, and that included swords. There was another law that outlawed the use of magic. Papa broke that law just by existing, so he had to be extra careful when we left our cave. If anyone saw his glowing eyes, he could be in big trouble. Why were all the cool things against the law? A red light shined out of the book. Bear gave me another impenetrable look and pushed the light back in between the pages. But I was on to him. He was trying to distract me, and it was working. The questions were bubbling up inside me again. I needed answers. What are you really reading? I pointed to the book. When another sword thrust out of it, I retracted my hand and backed away as that wickedly sharp blade swept toward me. Where did that come from? Nowhere important. Bear clucked his tongue as he batted the sword away, and it melted back into the book. But he was enjoying this. The more I squirmed, the more he fought the grin his lips had been stitched into. What the heck was he reading? I bit my lip to keep from asking again, but the question was on the tip of my tongue, burning a hole in me the longer it went unanswered. Bear knew it, too. His button eyes shone with mirth as he turned the page and winked at me. What do you think I'm reading? Tete-a-tete with the dragon. Mount Eredra and Sheari. Why are you chasing my son? Sarn glared at the dragon. Magic filled his cupped hands, warm and emerald bright, ready to be cast. But down here, there were so many spells worked into the walls, ceiling, and floor. Sarn had to be careful not to hit or disrupt any. Otherwise, he could cause a cave-in. Never again. One cave-in was enough. It had been years ago, but the nightmares still plagued him. All thoughts of them vanished as the dragon charged. Sarn threw up his hands to block her, and magic shot from them into a green half-dome. The dragon crashed into that shield, driving Sarn backward until he struck the floor. Blue glowing ones and zeros fountained off the dragon as she pushed against his shield, intent on crushing it. Her scaly hide disintegrated where it touched the magic, exposing the luminous lines of code that had spawned her. But what the hell was she doing here? Sarn hadn't recognized the so-called newsletter dragon at first, but he was used to seeing her as a two-dimensional rendering of code on a screen, not a scale and bone dragon. The more she slammed into his magic, the more her physical body devolved back into the bits and bytes that usually comprised her. She seemed to be unraveling layer by layer, but there wasn't any blood underneath those leathery scales. How did you get here? Sarn shoved the dragon with a burst of magic. Magic disrupted tech. But what effect did it have on magic? Wouldn't you like to know? The dragon grinned, then exhaled another fireball larger than the first. It washed over his shield, eating away at it. Some of the fire got through and singed his green uniform. Damn it. It was expensive to replace. Sarn fed more magic into his disintegrating shield and scanned the wall behind the dragon. It wasn't load-bearing. Good. Sarn pulled on it with his magic, and rocks pummeled the dragon's back, and that cut off her fire. She growled and bared her teeth. Smoke curled out of her mouth, but no more fire shot out. Is that all you've got? Because it'll take more than a few stones to stop me. No, that wasn't anywhere near all he had, but Sarn had to tread carefully because there was a mountain on top of them, and 10,000 souls lived inside it. How could he defeat a dragon? What would his heroes do? Sarn searched his memory for an answer. One of the guardians of old must have faced down a dragon in the centuries past. Shiari had been a wilder place then. What would they do in this situation? Sarn didn't know, but he needed a plan, fast, or to stall until he came up with one. Stalling looked like his only option. Damn. Why are you after my son? He's just a little kid. There's nothing he could have done to incite such anger. That's for me to know and you to wonder. The dragon lunged for him, but Sarn dodged, and the dragon crashed into a wall. It didn't even flinch, though, because the protective spells in it evenly distributed the force of her impact, so no one section took the brunt of it. This isn't about some comments he made. So what's it really about? Sarn grabbed the fallen rocks with his magic and slammed them into her back, but they broke upon the spikes along her spine. Maybe he has something I want. The dragon snapped back at Sarn. Snapped a kick at Sarn, but she hit his shield instead, and he collapsed to outer edge and wrapped it around her foot. She spun, using her tail to balance, and kicked out with her other foot, but Sarn repeated the trick and captured that foot too. The dragon landed on her side, teeth bared in a snarl, as he punched out with his shield and sent her sliding down the tunnel. She dug her claws into the stones and stopped herself halfway down the tunnel, buying him a moment to regroup. Sarn staggered as exhaustion mauled him, and the world threatened to gray out for a moment. He shook his head, and his vision cleared in time to see the dragon charging not at him, but at the door. Her mouth wreathed in flames. Oh, no, you don't. You're not getting past me. Sarn stepped in front of it, and the dragon crashed into his shield, driving him backward with the force of the collision. The door behind Sarn swung inward, and he skidded across the floor, shoving the dirty laundry out of the way. His sixth sense screamed at him to protect his son, as the dragon sucked in another breath to fuel another fireball. And that's all I'm going to read today. My throat is so dry right now. So that's Dragon Spells. That was the first 4 chapters of Dragon Spells. So I hope you enjoyed it. Dragon Spells is available from Amazon.com. And it actually will be on sale starting June 29th. That's this coming Monday. I'll put the link in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed that. And we'll do another one soon. So everybody have a great night. Thanks so much for coming. Okay, bye.